Lesson 10.1, make predictions. Statistics deal with collecting, organizing, and interpreting data. A survey is a method of collecting information. The group being studied is the population. Sometimes the population is very large, so to save time and money, part of the group called the sample is surveyed. So we're going to look at a few examples here, and we have to figure out, is this a sample or a population? So we're surveying about the dress code changes. So the students at the middle school. The students at the middle school would be a population, because that's everybody. And then the 7th graders at the middle school, that would be a sample, because we're just asking a few people in our population. Okay? Favorite flavors of ice cream. So the customers at the ice cream shop in town. Again, we're just talking to a select few people at the ice cream shop, so that would be a sample. And then the residents of a town, that would be the population, because that's everybody. So now we're going to make predictions using ratios. So you can use the results of a survey or past actions to predict the actions of a larger group. Since the ratios of the responses of a good sample are often the same as the ratios of the responses of the population. So a survey found that 6 out of every 10 students have a blog. So A says, what's the probability that a student at the school has a blog? So again, we need to go back to our survey results and figure out, well, how many people said they blogged out of how many total? Well, it said 6 out of every 10 students say they blog. Again, when we work with fractions, we have to simplify them. So 6/10 simplifies down to 3/5. Okay, suppose there are 250 students at the school. About how many have a blog? Okay, so when we're predicting the future and using ratios, we're going to set up a proportion. Our proportion always starts with the ratio based off of our survey. So we said that 3 out of every 5 students are going to tell us that they blog. Okay, proportions are 2 ratios that equal each other. So now when we set up our second ratio, we have to ask ourselves, do we know how many are going to blog, or do we know how many students we're going to talk to in total? Well, we know that there are 250 students, so we can fill that in. Okay, we don't know how many are going to blog, but we're going to predict it based on what we were told in our survey. So to solve our proportion, we cross multiply, set them equal to each other. So 5x equals 750. Since we're multiplying by 5, we're going to divide by 5. So x equals 150. So we would say, based off of our survey, 150 students are going to tell us that they would blog. Okay, we're also going to make predictions using equations. So you can also use the percent equation to make predictions. So again, we're going to review the percent equation. The percent equation is part equals percent times whole. Okay? Or parts equals percent times whole. So the results of a survey asking teens their favorite type of book to read is shown. Okay, so the circle graph here. So out of 250 teens, predict how many would choose mystery as their favorite type of book to read. Okay, so now we're using our percent equation. So part equals percent times whole. And we need to fill in 2 of our variables. Okay, so I start with the part. Do I know how many people or students are going to pick mystery as their favorite book? I don't know that. That's what I'm trying to solve for. Okay, my percent, that's in my circle graph here. So we want mystery. Well, it told us that 37% are going to choose mystery. Remember, when you're using the percent equation, you have to change your percents to decimals. So you have 37%. And then times the whole. So how many people did we ask? We're going to ask 250. So we go ahead and multiply, and we would get 92.5. So we would say about 93 teens are going to pick mystery as their favorite type of book. Okay? Letter B, out of 250 teens, predict how many would choose adventure as their favorite type of book to read. So again, our percent equation, part equals percent times whole. I don't know the part because I don't know how many are going to pick adventure. My percent, I got to go back to my circle graph, and adventure is 25%. So again, we change our percents to decimals. And then times our whole. So how many people are we going to ask? We're going to ask 250 people. Okay? So then we go ahead and multiply. So we get 62.5. So we would say about 63 teens are going to pick adventure as their favorite type of book. Okay, letter C. Out of 250 teens, predict how many would choose science fiction or romance as their favorite type of book. So again, I start with my equation. Part equals percent times whole. Okay, again, I don't know the part. I don't know how many are going to pick science fiction or romance. So I'm going to leave my variable P there. My percent, now I want science fiction or romance, so I want both of them together. So if I look at my circle graph, science fiction is 25%, romance is 13%. So I have to add those 2 together. So I really have 38%. And then times the whole again, which is 250. So when I multiply, I get 95. So we would say 95 teens would pick either science fiction or romance as their favorite type of book. Okay, for exercises 3 through 6, we're going to use the table and the following information. A survey of students' favorite sports was taken from a random sample of students in a school. The results are shown in the table. Okay, so number 3 says, what is the size of the sample? So I want to know, how many people did we sample here? So we need to add up all the people that picked their favorite type of sport. So 8 plus 3 plus 5 plus 4 is 20. So we serve 20 students. Okay, what is the probability that a student will prefer soccer? So we got to go back to our table and figure out, well, how many picked soccer? Well, told us 8. And then out of the total number we surveyed, which was 20, so 8 out of 20 would choose soccer. Now remember, when we work with fractions, we have to simplify. So 8/20 simplifies down to 2/5. So we would say 2 out of every 5 students would prefer soccer. Number 5, what is the probability that a student will prefer volleyball? So again, we go back up to our table and we figure out, well, how many picked volleyball? Well, we had 5 out of our total number, so 20 students. And again, we have to simplify, so 5/20 simplifies down to 1/4. Okay, so there are 550 students in the school. Predict how many students at the school prefer track and field. So I want to know now, based on my survey, if I ask 550 students, how many do I think will predict or say they like track and field? Okay, so if it doesn't specify which way to solve this, you can either use your proportion or your equation. I'm going to use the proportion. Okay, so again, I always start with what happened in our survey. So they told us that 4 out of the 20 students are going to say that they like track and field. Okay, now I don't know how many are going to pick track and field, but I know I'm going to ask 250 or 550 people. Okay, we solve our proportion, we cross multiply, set them equal to each other. So 20x equals 2,200. Since I'm taking 20 times x, I do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing. So x equals 110. So I would say 110 students are going to pick track and field.